I'm Patricia, and this is Investigating Vegan Life with Patricia Kathleen. This series features interviews and conversations I conduct with experts from food and fashion to tech and agriculture, from medicine and science to health and humanitarian arenas. Our inquiry is an effort to examine the variety of industries and lifestyle tenets in the world of vegan life. To that end, we will cover topics that have revealed themselves as common and integral when exploring veganism. The dialogue captured here is part of our ongoing effort to host transparent and honest rhetoric for those of you who, like myself, find great value in hearing the expertise and opinions of individuals who have dedicated their work and lives to their ideals. You can find information about myself and my podcast at patriciakathleen.com. Welcome to Investigating Vegan Life. Now let's start the conversation. Hi everyone, and welcome back. I'm your host, Patricia, and today we are speaking with Celine Ikeler. She is the creator and owner of Karma Baker. Welcome, Celine.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to kind of climb through your shop and everything that you guys offer there. For everyone looking to get a hold of Celine or discover more, you can contact her or find out more about her shop on karmabaker.com. I'm going to go through a quick bio of Celine before I start peppering her with questions. But before that, a roadmap for today's podcast and vodcast for those of you listening and tuning in today. We'll first look at Celine's academic background and professional history to kind of develop a platform for her personal background. And then we'll look at unpacking Karma Baker's history and the origin of the story. And then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the who, what, when, where, why, how of the business, and then turn to the ethos and the philosophy behind it. And then we will look at goals that Celine may have for Karma Baker over the next 1 to 3 years. Those are changing dramatically for everyone given the current social and business climate of today. And then we'll wrap everything up with advice that Celine may have for those of you looking to get involved, patron her services in store, and also possibly emulate some of her success. A quick bio on Celine and Karma Baker. She is the original Karma Baker, starting about 15 years ago with a desire that everyone should be able to enjoy the bliss that only delicious baked goods can generate. After years of creating and developing recipes, she opened Karma Baker, based in a suburb just north of Los Angeles. A wonderful little bake shop that makes only amazing vegan and gluten-free desserts and breads. No eggs, no dairy, and no wheat anywhere in sight. Celine has fast become one of the most successful and influential bakers in Southern California. Now she is offering a wonderful solution for people that are not so lucky to live near Karma Baker or one of their many partners. They deliver many of their products to your doorstep without being damaged while maintaining freshness. So if you live in the United States, you can now enjoy the revolution that is Karma Baker. And we'll climb through all of those ins and outs through the services that you offer, Celine. But I'm hoping you can start us off with talking about your academic background and early professional life that brought you to the opening Karma Baker.
Yeah, sure. So I started out as an artist. I think a lot of bakers actually are also artists at heart. I went to art school in San Diego, actually. I'm neighbors with you,
Nice.
and went right into a career in animation. I worked in animation in Chicago for a little while, and then in Los Angeles for about 15 years, I think, working on animated movies, the whole digital aspect, kind of at the forefront of, when we started using computers at all, and especially for digital imaging. So that was really fun. I loved it. It was very creative, and anything that's innovative and cutting edge and new and difficult is kind of my thing. So in that day, we were, learning as we went, figuring it out as we went, creating things to make it work, right? And now that I look at it, I think it's exactly what I've had to do with the bakery. So after my career in animation, I had 2 kids and ended up finishing my last movies when my daughter was 2, and moved out to the suburbs, and just was a mom for, I'd say, 12 years. I was a home mother, baking at home for my kids, no vegan, no allergies in sight, really, other than my daughter's next door neighbor had a very, very severe allergy to so many things. wheat, dairy, eggs, soy, certain kinds of fruits and vegetables, all nuts, really, really extreme anaphylactic shock kind of
Wow.
reaction.
Yeah.
So, scary to bake for her, scary to have her in my kitchen even, that kind of thing. And that opened my mind, well, originally it opened my heart because I couldn't handle that she couldn't eat anything fun. There was just no food for her. So I started figuring out how to make stuff without eggs and dairy and wheat. Not easy. There's
Yeah.
been many before me who have, stumbled into the field over the years, but it's definitely a labor of love, a teaching yourself, trial and error, creating out of true necessity,
Yeah.
and creating something that wasn't there before to make something else, so that's kind of how I got started.
It started you off on the trajectory. So once you started baking these things, what was the impetus for kind of switching into, you can make things without allergens? It sounds like,
Yeah.
in sight of this little girl. However, there is also like a switch over, like you have this gluten-free aspect. Was it a natural trajectory? Did you just start saying, I can do so much more with so much less? Did you just start extracting ingredients because you felt like it, or was it a goal driven?
Well, she was allergic to wheat, dairy, and eggs, and
Okay.
they were the hardest with baking. So right off the bat, I had, my work cut out for me. And gluten-free flours at the time, especially, there were a few mixes, but they had dairy in it, or they had egg powder, or they had nuts, or they had bean flour. They had something that she couldn't eat. And so that's when I thought, well, I'll just make my own blend.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that was a viable option, but it really just, I really had no limits around it. I thought, well, I'll just figure out, there's all these blends. One of them has got to be the right combination that doesn't have some of that other stuff. So
Did you
that's
have
when I
like
started.
a source that you considered like this key source to go to? Because when you start an endeavor like that, it's daunting, right? Anyone, even people who are really familiar with baking or goods or anything like that, when you start taking away things like flour or getting into flour alternatives, from chickpea to rice to and the differences in how they bake and they behave differently, and all, like you're talking about blends. When you start off, was there a source of like a cookbook or a person or a guide or anything like that that kind of helped you navigate those early stages?
I definitely did a lot of searching, internet searching, looking for blogs. There were people that did a lot of dairy and egg free, and then there were people that did gluten free. Nobody was really doing the whole thing, though.
Hmm.
That was kind of the trick, was marrying the two, because if you're doing gluten free and you have eggs, you only have half the battle. The eggs do all of the binding and the lifting and the magic texture.
Right.
But if you don't have eggs, already that's a little bit tricky. And you don't have any lift from gluten, now you're doing it on your own. So there was one, Erin McKenna she actually has a bakery out in LA. And I think in New York City, I think was her original. She had a cookbook at the time. And I think it was one of the first ones I picked up and was like, what is arrowroot? What is
Yeah.
what is this ingredient? So, that her book was probably very helpful in the very beginning of deciphering the different flours and trying to find what replaces the bean flour. She
Right.
most of her recipes have a bean flour base, which Sophia or I could not do. So that was a crucial step.
What brought you to finally, it sounds like you started experimenting and just baking for yourself in a vegan manner, but what brought you to make the leap between, because it's very different to eat vegan and then want to have a vegan business. And
Yeah.
so what, right? It's a different beast.
Yes.
What was the final push, and when did you launch Karma Baker?
Okay, so I was baking for Sophia out of, pleasure. And then I realized that I myself had a runny nose every time I ate, and
Hmm.
Sophia's mother said that that's definitely a food allergy. And so we started trying to figure out what it was. Maybe it's egg, maybe it's dairy, maybe it's wheat. I had a blood test, and that pointed me to five things: eggs, dairy, all bovine actually, so all cow, and wheat, and not gluten, but wheat, the grain itself, and then beans and garlic. So very broad, strange things. And she said, you know, if you get rid of them cold turkey, you might get it back. Your body can learn how to get it back. So I did. I just got rid of all of those. And that's when kind of the baking shift really happened for me, because while I may have been making stuff for Sophia that was pretty good, I now was the new audience and it needed to be excellent. I didn't
Yeah.
want to eat a bad cookie. You know, who wants to eat a mediocre cookie? You just want to eat one amazing cookie and be done, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I really kind of upped the production for myself, just really hardcore experimenting and really getting it down. And I created some things that were unbelievable. I couldn't believe I was having such amazing luck. The flour I created lended itself to the vegan aspect of what I was doing, like magically. It was almost like a divine intervention. I just said, you know, I don't know how to do this, so tell me, you know.
Yeah.
And I just, if I got an idea, I ran with it, you know, kind of constantly putting new things into play and see. And you know, the first like 4 or 5 things I made were truly like mind blowing, and my friends and family, everyone around me was so like, I mean, this is remarkable. You can't not share it. You know, you have to do something. And so at the time, I was divorcing and, you know, starting on a new path in life, and I needed to create a business for myself, because that's that's the first thought I had, was I should start a business.
Yeah.
And instead of get a job. As an entrepreneur, that's,
Absolutely.
you know, a
Yeah.
very natural thought process, I guess. But I thought, you know, I'll do that. I'm going to start a bakery. I'm going to get this in people's mouths. I'm going to change how they think about, you know, what something without dairy and eggs, you know, can taste like.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I wasn't actually interested in a bakery, like in the community with a storefront, that kind of thing. I really just wanted to be quite a bit bigger and reach everybody via restaurants, cafes. I wanted to be the dessert when they bring out the big cart at the end of, you know, your big Italian meal, and they say, oh, which one is vegan and gluten free? And they would point to mine and say, this is from Karma Baker. And people say, okay, good, that's the one I want, because I've heard that's the best, right? That was kind of my original,
Yeah.
you know, the mountain out there for me. Um, and sort of with that in mind, I kind of went right to some restaurants and just started. I started out of my house in January of 2013. And within 6 months, outgrew my home kitchen quickly.
Nice.
Rented space at a commercial kitchen. That also 6 months, grew out of that.
Wow.
and knew immediately, okay, I'm ready to take the plunge and start my own kitchen. You know, I could tell that that was the direction it was going. The business was almost, you know, the energy behind it was so forceful. It had a life of its own. I almost couldn't stop it in a way.
Yeah.
So then we got the big kitchen that also had a little storefront, and grocery stores started coming in, and the community started knocking on the window saying, when are you going to open? And then I said, oh my gosh, I don't want to open.
Yeah.
And then I just did, stuck a sign in the door, and we became a bakery, kind of with the idea of like an outlet, you know, that we'd be baking for restaurants, and we would just sell whatever's happening that day, we'd sell in front, you know.
Yeah.
And then
It's different. You have, so, I mean, I like the angle that you came at it. I know a lot of small bakeries and things actually always, you more times than not, start out of reverse. They'll start with their storefront and then they'll start approaching restaurants or things of that nature. And so it's cool that you started from that kind of reverse back end moment. And they're two totally different beasts, satisfying those different clienteles. Well, three, if you're, you know, if you're also getting into shipment, but going dealing directly with restaurants as opposed to, you know, stores, and then also having your own shop front. They have different schedules, they have different needs, right? Different times of
exactly.
delivery and all of those types of things. So managing all three of those, it sounds like it takes three very different hats to do. I
Yes.
kind of want to climb into, because when you get a storefront, I think you do more about the philosophical endeavor. You know, when you're going through someone else's restaurant, you're giving them maybe a doctrine that you're hoping they convey, in addition to it being gluten-free and, vegan. You're hoping that they say something about the ingredients or the love or the attention and the efficacy of that food. But when you have the opportunity to do it yourself, you have your own, bakery. Can you kind of speak to what you try to infuse the philosophy of the ethos into your staff, or the way that it's set up so that you kind of convey your message to the customer?
Yes. Early on when we, started hiring employees, and I had heard from other people what it's like to work in a kitchen. It didn't sound very nice. It sounded intense, hardcore, competitive, controlling. It sounded, honestly, we've seen lots of the shows like Hell's Kitchen and, you know, Chopped, and, there's so much intensity and
Mhm.
forcefulness in that environment. And I naively, as I've done everything with this whole business, naively jumped in. But I naively said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to have, negative energy in here.
Yeah.
We are changing people's minds and hearts and souls around something so delicate and close to their heart. We have to be in our most authentic heart space. We have to have the most best intentions when we are making this food. Meaning we have to make sure every single thing we make is perfect. It
Yeah.
tastes perfect, it comes out perfect. And that when we're making it with the intention that someone is going to eat it, and they're going to get that with them. That's going to come to them. So enlightened baking kind of became this philosophy that I started telling my co-chefs and the people who worked in the front. We're doing something differently here. We are affecting a karma. And that's the name of the bakery. Karma Baker comes from not so much a karma bakery. We aren't, it's not a catchy catchphrase that guided us to that name. Karma Baker means that we are taking into account the karmic footprint of the food itself. So where does that butter come from? Where is that egg coming from? What's it been through already before it comes to our door?
Yeah.
That animal that has a karmic imprint on it. And when we eat that food, it is now in us. And so I notice a lot of people when they go vegan, they calm down. They have a lighter sense about them. I definitely believe it changes you on the inside. It changes your DNA. It affects your compassion. I think I really think it changes you. It changed me because I didn't go vegan for any reasons other than dietary issues. And it almost blossomed within me where, I just gave up, beef, eggs, and dairy. And within months, I couldn't eat any meat. I couldn't be in the meat aisle at the grocery store. Like, it just changed me. And I thought, what has happened?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that, I tell our employees, I remind them that there's something much bigger, much deeper that's going on in our bakery and in our process. And most of them get it. In fact, they're almost a little bit shocked by it because they've never been told, we want you to be happy when you're making food. We
Yeah.
want you to feel good when you're working. So that's what we rest on, that idea, that principle. When things are going wrong in the kitchen, we come back to that. How
Yeah.
are we?
Absolutely. Well, and the majority of vegans that I meet were not born into a vegan family. And so I think what's interesting about that is it is an opportunity. Anytime there's a conversion into a way of life, and veganism, as it's directly addressing the source of fuel that your body lives off of, it spills out into all aspects of one's life, even if it wasn't consciously known to in the beginning. But there's an opportunity with that kind of a conversion for almost a mandate for education. And so what I think is interesting is that people who have become vegan educate themselves, even if they were prolifically well versed in food and nutrition, they begin to educate themselves even more. So wherever they started from, it's this opportunity. And I like to talk to vegans about this because especially in the food industries, there's an opportunity to educate anybody, you know, people understanding that it's vegan and probably therefore better for you on some level. How do you address that? Do you have moments of education, particularly in your store? You're talking about, you know, this education that you give to your employees by just saying, you know, it's the way that we create the food, and it needs to be happiness. It needs to be light and calm. And that, do you take the opportunity to do that with your customers on a conscious level as well? Is there like spots of education, or is it just by experience that they're being educated?
You know, it's a very delicate place to tread, spreading the vegan
Sure.
philosophy, love, and knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It a lot of people are not yet open to their food being controlled, right? So when you know, they say, why is it vegan? You know, some people come in because they're just gluten free, and they'll say, you know, why no dairy and eggs, you know, and we'll kind of explain, you know, the philosophy behind it. um, the one thing that I think speaks to everybody though is the environmental impact, and that is the thing that everybody's open to, you know. So
Hmm.
now we've kind of, instead of, you know, pointing to an animal cruelty kind of situation, you know, and explaining the Karma Baker name, we point to, you know, this cupcake is going to save 550 gallons of water. Okay, go. And they're
Yeah.
like, what? That's crazy. That's impossible. How? You know, and you know, as Californians especially, we're highly sensitive to our water supply. And I did not know, actually, before Cowspiracy came out, that that was even an issue. And I was horrified to find out that people did know about it. People in
Hmm.
power and, you know, controlling our food knew about it and weren't doing anything. So when I try to, you know, just reach somebody with that message, they're usually incredibly open and shocked themselves, and then open to making tiny changes themselves, you know, because like you
Yeah.
said, you know, the bakery is always the one where people say, well, I can, you know, not eat meat, and, you know, I can eat healthy, but when I want dessert, I want it to be good. You know, I
Yes.
want banana cream pie. You know, I
Yeah.
want ice cream, you know, and that's changing for them because now they've got the opportunity to, you know, maybe I don't need it because of this bakery, or, you know, that ice cream shop. You know, I think we're all making immense changes.
Yeah. And I think adults are as equally attached. I think it's masked with children. You know, I know grown adults, the majority of the adults I know weep for a really great sweet, but they won't say that. They'll say, well, you know, it's the kids. Like, what am I going to get for, you know, the birthday party or the this? They kind of mask it under that as well. And that's fine too. You know, I think getting children really attached to a great vegan, gluten-free cupcake is where you're gonna, that's the future, you know. It's where we're gonna get our market. And I agree with that. I'm wondering, I want to talk a little bit about some of like the particulars of like the differences between a vegan bakery as you could compare them to your counterparts that are not vegan. So
Mm.
even getting into some of this, my head goes to like the things that you purchase. You know, you got into the arrowroot or talking about things of that nature. Eggs, you don't purchase. Butter, you don't. Do you think your fridge size is smaller because you're not requiring some of those things that need to live inside a refrigerator, and therefore even like lessening your carbon footprint with how much electricity you're taking up? Like, how do some of those things change, do you think, for you as compared to a non-vegan bakery?
Well, the first thing when it comes to ingredients is a non-vegan gluten-free bakery is subsidized by the government. So dairy, eggs, wheat, they are practically free. They are practically free
Yeah.
ingredients. So our ingredients right off the bat, the three, you know, major things, our fat, our flour, and then the multitude of things we use to replace eggs with, are not even just double what a traditional bakery is. It
Mhm.
is 4 times as much. So finding our ingredients is the first issue because they are much more natural, much more less processed. They aren't kind of pre-made and then sold. You know, a lot of bakeries, for instance, we make our graham cracker crust from scratch. So meaning we make the graham crackers and
Yeah.
then we grind
Right.
that up. You know, a regular bakery goes to a supplier and buys a 50-pound bag of graham cracker crumbs, you know, that has butter, eggs, and honey and wheat, right?
Hmm.
For probably about $20, maybe less. You know, we are doing it differently. We make our own caramel. We make our own all of our own flour blends. We used to make our own sprinkles. Like you know, we've had to make and get very creative with finding our ingredients and then getting the price down. So that's probably been our biggest hurdle really is, you know, finding coconut oil in the early days. That's our primary fat. Um, you know, finding it in a gallon, finding it in a 5-gallon, you know, bin, very difficult. And if you can't
Yeah.
find it one or they've run out, we
Yeah.
were pretty screwed many times, you know. Now we buy it in 55-gallon drums. We have them, you know, back stored, so we have a bunch of them. But, you know, and we only have one place we buy it from. So hopefully that place it stays in business.
Yeah.
The upside is that as vegan and gluten-free stuff becomes more mainstream and people are looking for it, the prices come down and the relative competition to make the products comes up. So you have more people who are making vegan caramel, say, you know, so those kinds of things, they're not mainstream yet, but they're getting there. So yeah, as far as fridge space, I would say it's all the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's all there. I just don't know, you know.
I know, I love that idea, that thinking. I've never compared it before. I
We've
kind of want to
talked
think
off
about
the record about I worked in as a child, well, as a 20-year-old, which is a child.
it.
I worked in bakeries, you know, and in college and things like that. And it is interesting to think about. It's a different universe. I really feel baking is it's unto itself. And so it was interesting to think about, like, how would that work? I mean, you think of a bakery, it's eggs, sugar, flour. You've removed two, you know, and so
Yep.
my mind kind of bends even as a vegan as to what that business looks like and the
Yeah.
differences between it. And teaching people how to bake that way. You know, bakers, it's a lifelong profession a lot of the time, and people do that profession forever. And so someone to come in and say, I'm a baker, and then walk into your place is not going to really know what they're doing for a minute. You know, training everyone up like that, like it's a very unique thing when you're all alone.
Right.
So I wonder, so can you speak to some of you do this nationwide endeavor now, and I want you to kind of unpack some of that so that everyone listening who does not live just outside of LA can kind of tap into what you're doing and get on and see. You have a website. Is everything accessible there? And what products are you kind of shipping nationwide right now?
Yeah, cool. We started our website 5 years ago, sort of as a potential for shipping online, and then also so that people could see our menu and view the ingredients and be familiar with what they're eating, and pick up at our store. So we actually have two methods on the website for ordering and either picking up or shipping. And the online ordering shipping has always been, you know, it's been plugging along. It's been a great experience because we've learned how to ship food the best possible way. We've learned what items do ship and don't ship. We've spent the last year and a half now shipping cakes, so whole birthday cakes, all over California and the whole nation. We have a very good success rate with cakes getting there in lovely shape and still delicious and moist and everything.
Wow.
Because that is the heartbreak. You know, you
Yeah.
order a birthday cake and everything is on that cake, right?
Right.
So it's the centerpiece.
Mm-hmm.
So fortunately, we've had a lot of experience working out a lot of the kinks in shipping. And now that this COVID crisis has happened, our online shipping has, let me get the number. I feel like it has at least quadrupled. I think it's actually more like 10 times. It's exponentially growing every week. So we're at about 10 times our normal production for shipping stuff. So we ship cakes now. We have 5 what we call a karma box. So it's a box of specific items. One is our sampler, which is the most popular. It has 10 items that are kind of the bakery's highlights. So our donuts are incredibly popular. Our brownies are very popular. We sell to a lot of the grocery stores around us in Southern California. So we have a large following just from, the brownies. People still come in and say, I didn't know you were a bakery. I just thought you
Yeah.
made this brownie, So we sell, the highlights, the rock stars from the bakery in our boxes, brownie box, a donut box, cake pops, fun things like that. And then with the virus kind of came a little bit of inspiration, like, everybody wants our cupcakes. And so we decided to pack them in jars, with the 8-ounce mason jar, and you get the layered cupcake in there, the lid, at Easter was when we kind of launched it. And you take the lid off, and inside the carrot cake jar is a little bunny diving in, and that was a
That's
giant
great.
hit, super
Yeah.
cute, right? So everybody was ordering that. So the jars are taking off, and my favorite thing is the creativity. So I've just designed 12 new flavors of jars to start adding to the mix. They travel so well, they keep so long, and it really is like, a true treat. Feels really special.
That feels like your Everest. I feel bakery and then shipping. I immediately go to lack of quality control. My brain, like the issues that I would see, the hurdles immediately. Quality control for one, and then preservatives infusion to get that lifespan and that longevity. Have you been able to navigate that successfully, or was it trial and error to get to? Because I know that, on your site, you talk about consistency and the importance of maintaining, the experience that you really want everyone to have. So how did you kind of address those two? And was it a learning curve, or did you know it out the gate?
Yeah, definitely learning curve. We've always kept in mind that we have one chance to change someone's mind, because they're going to take one bite and go, oh, I knew it, this is terrible. Or they're going to go, oh, wow, this is crazy. So yes, the integrity in that first bite is everything. So we decided right off the bat to not ship items that we knew we couldn't 100% control, how it would arrive, taste and texture wise. And then the third problem is, like, it needs to arrive pretty,
Yeah.
So some of our cupcakes, we tried sending some trial errors, sending out cupcakes that were a bit of a cupcake soup. We had a few days like that in the early years.
Yeah.
But obviously you're not going to have a lot of success doing that. So, we designed things to make them travel well. The chocolate, our donuts are dipped all the way in chocolate, so that when they come out of the wrapper, they're sealed completely. When they come out of the wrapper, they are not messed up. They look really nice. It keeps the donut fresh inside. There's little things like that we've done to sort of curate
Nice.
how is this product going to get where it needs to go and be the best. So that's been, like I said, 5 years of plugging along and
Yeah.
trial and error, and not even taking chances on things that we just knew that's not going to work, and we don't
Yeah.
want to go there.
And I
Yeah.
think the word you just used is so perfectly descriptive it's a curation. You have curated this process, it truly is this very thoughtful, and it is an artistic endeavor. When you get to this level, particularly, I think all cooking and baking is, but on the level that you're functioning on and doing it at, it truly is, it's special, it's art, it's curated, it's
Yeah.
thoughtful, it's
Thanks.
amazing. I want to look at, I know that this has changed a lot and you've brought it up. So you clearly are feeling copacetic with the nature of it, as I think all small businesses have. And we're still all, or everyone is still kind of going through emotions, but you've had a dialogue, it sounds like, with yourself and even with your company and where it's headed, considering the pandemic that we're in and the future of it. But I'm hoping you can speak to the goals that you have for kind of all of the various aspects, even underneath it. I don't know if they vary, but for Karma Baker, like for the next 1 to 3 years, has the pandemic played into that significantly? Were you already headed there? Can you kind of speak to, and do you do that as a company? Do you have 3-year goals, or do you have smaller ones like 6-month goals?
Yeah, we have gotten out of the practice of having, 2 and 3, 90-day or 1 year or 3-year, 5-year goals. The thing that has happened with our business is that we have, we've always had the wholesale going to the grocery stores. We've always had the front, and then we've always had the online. And whenever something has happened within the neighborhood, we had giant fires here last year, and it practically closed everything down. Almost all of Malibu burned down, and we have a ton of customers from Malibu. So our community was missing. But things like that, we have been able to sort of just move into the direction of what works and push the business into that place. We always have had this very long/short-term goal of, giant success. Ultimately on the first day when I said, this is what I want to do, I wanted to be in Starbucks. When you go to Starbucks and there's nothing to eat, half of that counter is Karma Baker's vegan gluten-free stuff. That's where my head was, big.
Yeah.
Big. I don't want to be a bakery in LA. I want to be a bakery in the world. So I've always had kind of that as my goal out there, and what it takes to get to that goal along the way is a squiggly road. As long as I'm in the same direction on that road, I feel like we are succeeding. And honestly, when COVID hit and everybody was talking about closing down, all I could think was, there is no way we've gone through all this trouble and effort to close down and lose our business from this. It just felt inconceivable. And I thought, no way, that's not happening. And then people started finding us online, so search engines, I don't even know how they've been finding us really, but it's dozens of orders every day. It's
fantastic.
It's incredible. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that laser view you've got of the Starbucks out there. I think people who are that scoped in, Oprah calls it the secret years ago, like you can do whatever you want. But I think that kind of, as human beings, that kind of a clear focus and drive is the number one thing, 99% of all success, having that. That's cool. I like that. It's the first time I've, spoken to someone that has been that amazingly brave to be like, yeah, it was Starbucks. Most people get like a little shy. They maybe not to themselves, but when they're talking to someone with a podcast. So I love that you just, the audaciousness of putting it out there. That's fantastic. So, and in that same vein, I'm wondering if you could speak to the, 2013 you launching this endeavor, knowing what you know now, what are the top 3 pieces of advice that you would give? Be good or bad, stay away from this, do more of this. What would be the top 3 pieces that you would give back to yourself?
So many things. It's almost hard to choose 3. And, it's really hard to also, because the journey has been the process. And if I took a piece out, I'm not sure we would be where we were, or are.
Yeah.
I don't feel regretful about any of the choices or decisions we've made along the way. I would say, originally, if I could speak to myself then, I would say this is going to be really, really hard, and don't expect it to not be hard.
Yeah.
And I would say when you get the most afraid, the most fearful, lean into it and do that more. Whatever that thing is that feels so scary, push through it, because that's where change happens. That's where when your comfort level gets a little shaken, that's when you're doing something bigger than you would have done.
Yeah.
So we've like I said, we've moved into the things. We've kept 3 avenues of revenue open in order to move with the water, with the tide. But maybe I would tell myself to run ahead in one direction and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Sometimes that's kind of where we are right now, with the online shipping. It really is the best way for us to reach the most people. And, originally my goal is get this in everyone's mouth, change people's minds. Be there for that person that doesn't have a bakery near them, or whose mom can't make a cake, or, that's who we want to be getting into the mouth. So however we get in their mouth is where I want to go. Right. And the delivery, the online, the, eating at home, the bakery to you. Like I've always loved that. And I just thought maybe people weren't ready for it like I was ready for it. So maybe that's changed, and
Yeah.
maybe that's the silver lining.
It follows suit. You are through and through, leaning into discomfort and all of those things and having this magnificent goal. And I love it. I love all of it. And I'm sure it tastes in your food. Everyone's got to jump on karmabaker.com and if for nothing else than to have, this kind of profound person speaking for it and things like that. Like, you've got to taste that. Nobody can turn that down. You've got to give that a shot. We are out of time, Celine, but I want to say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate all of your information and your candor today.
Thank you so much, Patricia. It was wonderful to talk to you. Truly.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
For everyone listening, we've been speaking with Celine Ikeler, and you can find her and all of her delicious food on karmabaker.com. Until we speak again next time, thank you for tuning in. And I am reminding you to stay well, stay safe, eat well, and remember to always bet on yourself. Sláinte.